Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Jen Blandos and I'm here with Biancka Gracias and Saleh Alobeidli from ICLO law firm here, and we are here to do part 2 of the legal setup in the UAE, because we did a session the other week with Saleh and it was so popular. We were getting so many questions that Saleh and his colleague Biancka have very gratefully offered to sit down with us again today and answer more of your questions. So how we're going to run today's session is we're going to take you through, and we're going to go through some of the general questions, because we found that a number of people were asking the same questions all the time. And so what we've decided to do is we've decided to go and answer those questions first, and then open it up to more of a general Q&A session. Now, we do have an hour of time this morning, so we do want to make use of as much of time as possible. So if you do have a question and you do want to ask it when we open it up to Q&A, I would be really grateful if you tried to keep it as succinct as possible so we can help as many other women as possible on that. The other thing that I wanted to ask you and also to remind you is that this session is going to be recorded, and because it is going to be recorded, that means that it will be shared publicly. So if you do have a question about your business and you don't want that information in the public domain, I do ask you just to be a little bit general and to not say anything that you don't want to be shared publicly. The other thing as well, because it is public, I would also remind you to respect the laws of the UAE, and that also involves saying or naming other organizations. I ask you please not to do that, because that is not in accordance of UAE law, okay? So just a little quick reminder as well, if anybody wants to share social media handles, and I'm sorry, I've just shared the wrong slide actually, because I have Biancka's handle on here as well. So let me just share with you Biancka's handle as well. So if you do want to do any tagging, or if you want to mention us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, here's everybody's details as well, the tags. So you're welcome to go and do that. So there's all the information there. So what I'd like to do first maybe is open it up to Biancka and Saleh, because maybe first just to introduce yourselves again. Biancka, everybody hasn't mentioned you or met you before, so if you could maybe introduce yourself quickly, and Saleh, maybe if you could just introduce yourself again for those who maybe didn't meet you last time.
Thank you very much, and hi everyone, good morning. My name is Biancka Gracias, and I am partner and head of startups and SMEs at International Consultant Law Office. We like to fondly call it ICLO. I have 17 years of experience in the UAE, and I specialize in dealing with all the growing pains, conflicts, disputes, structuring, restructuring, licensing, relating to startups and SMEs. So I hope to add value today to all your questions. Over to you, Saleh.
Hello, good morning, Assalamu alaikum. I'm here again. My name is Saleh Alobeidli, partner at ICLO law firm. I'm pleased to be here with Biancka and Jennifer and to speak to you for the second time or second session. Hopefully this time we can address more questions than last time. So here we go, back to you, Jennifer.
Okay, so the first question that we had come up a lot, and we've been getting a lot of emails about, that I would be really grateful if you would be able to clarify, is the difference between a visa and a trade license, just to clarify that for everybody.
Definitely. So shall I take it, Saleh?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll add later if anything.
Okay. So there is a stark difference between a visa, which is regulated by the Department of Immigration, as we like to fondly call it, and a license that is issued by one of the 60+ regulators in the United Arab Emirates. So your license is basically a document that gives you the permission to perform commercial activities and receive payments thereof. Whereas your visa is a document that allows you to legally stay in the country for X number of years, depending on the length of your visa. These two departments are at the federal level, which is they govern the whole of the UAE. and they're separate. They don't necessarily speak to each other. So if you get a license, it is not guaranteed you will get a visa. And if you have a visa, it is not guaranteed you will get a license. So it's very important for you to understand that a license and a visa is completely different. So whenever you ask questions or whenever you're making reference to anything, try not to commingle these words. Saleh, do you have anything else to add to what I just said?
Yeah, I mean, just to confirm, what we call it the Immigration Department, or the General Director of Residency and Foreign Affairs, is the government department that have absolutely full discretion in relation to issuing visas. So usually, of course, the free zones and other regulators that issue the trade license, usually they liaise and organize with this immigration department in order to offer and advise their customer correctly, but the final word and the final full discretion, it belongs to this immigration department. That's why also you see from time to time for health reasons, for whatever economic reason, could be political reason, whatever, you see sometimes they block some issuing from some visas from some countries for various reasons. So, and this is something changing all the time. So it's very much, we advise to also seek an understanding directly from the immigration department.
Great. One of the things as well, just to remind everybody, if you do have other questions on a subject that we're speaking about, please do pop them into the chat box and we'll pick those up, and we'll also give you an opportunity towards the end to unmute yourselves and ask other questions. Now, one question that we've got a lot of questions on is the subject about e-commerce and e-commerce licenses and how that works and where they should be licensed, if it's within a free zone or if it's within mainland. Would either of you be able to address that and go into a bit more detail about e-commerce licenses and how that works?
Definitely, Jen, I'll take that if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
E-commerce activities are provided in most free zones. The mainland have gone back and forth typically over the past few years in offering e-commerce activities and then taking it back and then offering something called e-trader through the mainland Dubai. I'm not talking about the e-trader license offered by the DED Cafe. I'm talking about the e-trader license offered by the mainland Dubai Economic Department. So they've traditionally only opened that up to GCC nationals and Emiratis. Over the past few years, then I've known that the Dubai Economic Department has then taken that back, said you can use general trading activity for everything else, and then they've come on back and they've offered e-trading again. They call it e-trading, that's correct. So they've gone back and forth over the past few years. Now, I don't know today whether they still have it at the economic departments of Dubai and Abu Dhabi. It's mostly we have to check on a regular basis. So they have the right to withdraw those activities and give them back. But as far as the free zones are concerned, I can definitely say most of them continue to offer e-commerce activities. Practically because it is an activity that is provided in cyberspace. And the other thing that I want to clarify is if you are providing e-commerce activities, do not store any goods at your home. Because I know there was a question that was asked, can I store my goods at home? You have to use a fulfillment service provider and a third-party logistics last mile provider. You will not be able to store the goods in your home because it is too risky. The activity that your home has is that of residential. It is not that of a warehouse. So if at all there is a complaint or the authorities come and investigate, you could be penalized.
So this goes for someone else asked a question about if they would be able to allow people to come to their house and pick up goods. So again, the same thing. Customers are not allowed to come and pick up goods at somebody's house.
Definitely no.
Okay, good. Now, if anybody has any questions about that related to e-commerce, maybe just put that into the chat. Another big area was drop shipping. And this is something which the whole realm of drop shipping is very new. Biancka, could you maybe explain if somebody wants to have a drop shipping business, how that would work and what that would look like from a licensing perspective?
I would like to say that drop shipping is provided as an activity, but currently it's not. And it's great that, you know, entrepreneurs are becoming so innovative and coming up with all these ideas in which they could work. Now, there are various models to drop shipping. Some models are where the individual who's actually holding the license stores the products with them. And there are other models where they don't store the products with them. Now, where they store the products, it would be ideal to have a third-party fulfillment service provider. However, where they are receiving it directly from a wholesaler and then retailing it through their website, the activity that they would need to have perhaps would be something like project management or product management, or something along the lines that allows them to trade online but manage the supply chain process as well. They could also check whether there would be an activity for perhaps supply chain management. However, at all points in time, the product, they have these activities and drop shipping is actually what they're engaging in. They should try and make sure that the product really does not pass through them, because if it passes through them, then they also would have to record for VAT, if at all they're subject to VAT, and they would need to act as a distributor. Then it becomes far more complex if the product passes through them.
Right, okay. So anybody have further questions about drop shipping? Because we had about 15 or 20 people messaging me and Saleh as well, wanting to know more about that. So I know there's quite a few entrepreneurial ladies who have set up drop shipping companies or are thinking about doing that as well. If the product, Meg Shree says, if the product does not pass through us, then what license is required?
If the product does not pass through, you could look at supply chain management, you could look at product management, project management. And if you're really a small business only doing anything online, then you could also look at e-commerce in the free zone. eTrader does have project management, but I don't think it will allow you to have the e-commerce activity. It will only really be project management. So I would say more of e-commerce would be more applicable in this case, or supply chain management.
Okay, great. Now, another area a lot of women are doing is setting up a business potentially in a free zone where they're providing consultancy services, whatever it might be, whether it's marketing, PR, project management, and they've set up a business in a free zone. Are they allowed to work with companies outside of the free zone within the UAE if the company contacts them and asks them to do work? Could you elaborate on that?
To the extent that they are based in the free zone, their office is in the free zone, they're providing the services from that particular free zone. If a third party from mainland contacts them, they're absolutely fine to offer the service. However, they cannot engage in marketing activity on targeting the demographic on the mainland. They cannot really go out and have events, for example, on mainland. And they cannot engage typically with meetings on mainland. They will have to ask the client to come to their offices, because all their activity is only meant to happen in that particular free zone. And on that point, I also want to mention an associated point. A lot of free zone companies set up in the free zone, and then they take serviced business centers. They take offices at service business centers. Now, you have to be mindful of the activity that you have, because since you are a free zone company, legally, you're not allowed to be in those service business centers, regardless of the fact that they are providing that service to you. They should be offering it, strictly legally speaking, only to those businesses that are licensed on mainland. The fact that they allow you to come and sit in their centers does not make it legally correct. So if you're talking strictly in terms of black and white, you're only allowed to be placed in that particular free zone if you are licensed in that free zone.
Excellent. Quite a few questions coming through. Hathal says, if I'm registered as a yoga and lifestyle coach in the free zone and a mainland company contacts me for providing on-site services on their company premises, can I do that?
Definitely not. Unfortunately, you cannot do it, especially because you're going to their site. So you need to have certain insurances in place, certain licenses in place to be able to perform those activities. Regretfully, if you do perform those activities and if the authorities are made aware of it, you could incur a fine no less than 50,000 dirhams. So I'd say be very careful and mindful of it.
So would you recommend if somebody is, let's say, doing yoga or lifestyle coaching and they want to work around the country, that they would need to look at having a license outside of a free zone then?
Yes, definitely on mainland. Definitely, because you're literally talking about going onto premises, going onto sites. And let's take into example a risk scenario where something goes awry or something goes wrong. And say police are called to the scene. Say it's a really serious accident. Somebody fractures their neck. And if the licenses are asked to be produced and it's found out that you're not really meant to be trading there, in addition to the police action, you could also risk the fine of other penalties from the licensing authorities. So it's a huge risk to be licensed by a free zone and performing activities on mainland.
So they would need to have the customers come to them within the free zone.
Absolutely.
And somebody asks, we see these questions all the time. So somebody asked, what if they have a freelance permit? Are they allowed to teach yoga then, or are they limited to certain areas as well?
So with the freelance permit, it depends now which authority issues a freelance permit. Freelance permits were traditionally only issued, again, to Emiratis and GCC nationals. Now, recently, Abu Dhabi and Dubai, these two Emirates have opened it up to residents as well. So it really depends to what extent they allow you to operate in the physical space of that particular authority, or whether they say that particular freelance permit only allows you to function online. For example, the e-trader license that's issued by DED Cafe is only issued so you can promote yourself and perform services through social media or digital platforms. You're not meant to provide any physical services whatsoever.
Somebody, just to delve into this a bit more detailed, what is the use of going to a free zone in another emirate? And let's say you live in one emirate and another emirate, you get a free zone license from there when you're a coach. It doesn't make sense. People aren't going to come to an emirate different from where you live. So what's the alternative? I think the alternative is get one in the city or the emirate that you live, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
there is a question from Sana. I think there is still a bit of confusion, I think, regarding the same topic. If you see the question from Sana about if you are a consultant and provide service online with a company based in Dubai, is a trade license in Sharjah free zone allowing this activity? It's just to, if she can clarify it, what does it mean a company based in Dubai? Because if it's the trade license in Sharjah free zone, you will not be able to get an office in Dubai by this license. You will need another license in Dubai in order to have this office.
I think what she's wondering about here, she wants to know, can she provide online services if she's based in Sharjah free zone, but she has a customer in Dubai? Could she provide services online? Is that allowed?
Yeah, I think Biancka has already addressed that.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I want to jump over to a question, Biancka, about someone who has asked about, they want to start a business that promotes health and well-being through herbal and holistic approaches. And she wants to import herbs from around the world. And she wants to know what sort of license she would need to be able to get. And I know that this is quite complicated, so we might need to, I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, importing herbs in this country, and Saleh, feel welcome to correct me, is quite tricky, because there is a list of approved herbs that issued by the government that can be imported, and this list changes on a regular basis. Also, individuals cannot really import herbs. So if you are on a e-trader license or a freelancer permit, you need to be very careful with the types of herbs that you're importing, because anything coming into the country is regulated by Dubai Customs. And that's a completely different authority, and they have different rules and regulations than the immigration department that deals with your visa and the licensing authority. So if at all you import herbs that are not on the approved list at that point in time, you could run into serious trouble, especially if you don't have the correct licenses. And in addition to that, once the herbs enter the country, how they are concocted and put together needs to be approved by the Dubai municipality. So that product needs to be packaged in a way with the relevant labels and seals that is approved by the Dubai municipality. So it's not a simple, straightforward process when you're dealing with herbs. Saleh, do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, very important point. Yes, Dubai municipality specifically and Dubai customs are very strict with importing in general. So for any activity, for any license to import, you need to add to your license an import activity as well. So having a license doesn't allow you to import unless you have an activity added to your license which allow you to import. And I think it depends on the size and the activity. There is also a deposit to be paid. And I'll give a very simple example. For example, if someone have a coffee shop, so his trade license is a coffee shop, so he has the coffee shop, and he want to import coffee beans from abroad. So he needs to add an import activity to his license in order for Dubai Customs and Dubai municipality to allow him to import coffee beans specifically. Otherwise, there are sanction and fine quite heavy in place.
Great. Yeah, so it's quite complicated. So if she decides to go ahead with that business, it sounds like she's going to need to take professional legal advice to make sure that the structure is really done properly. And that's the thing as well. And we spoke about this last week with Saleh as well, is just don't automatically jump in and get a trade license. It's really important at the beginning when you set up your business to really do the research and think about where is going to be the best jurisdiction for you to set up your license, where your client's going to be, to make sure that you don't have any limitations. Because if you have to close down that business, it could potentially cost you more money than it did to set up the business. So make sure that the research is done. And this is amazing that we have the opportunity to ask you all of these questions about these as well. We keep getting a lot of questions, and I know that this is important to a lot of women, is the area of lifestyle coach, fitness coach, that sort of thing, that we've had questions from women. Are they allowed to go to people's homes to offer this service, or are they able to get people to come to their homes to deliver that service? Could you elaborate on that in a bit more detail?
Sure. Any commercial activity cannot be performed at a residential space because the activity of your home is residential. You shouldn't be going to anybody's house unless you are licensed on mainland and you have that permission in your home to be able to provide that service. In addition, if you are providing that service, you need to be insured adequately. Because if there is a claim brought by a client, for example, you went to perform yoga services in their house and something went missing and they brought that claim against you for whatever reason, you have to be able to have insurance to back you up. Whether or not you're, or for example, there was an injury on site. If you have a free zone license and you're acting in violation of the free zone regulations, that could be quite risky for you. And the risks and penalties far outweigh compliance. So I would strongly encourage you to be compliant with the license that you have rather than try and find loopholes. Compliance is your ally in such cases.
Yeah, and you mentioned something really important as well, Biancka, which is the whole area of insurance too. I meet a number of entrepreneurs who get their license, set up their business, but they haven't actually gotten insurance to go with that business as well. And it is a requirement that you need to have insurance, just because maybe the jurisdiction where you have your trade license doesn't check and doesn't ask you for proof of that doesn't mean that you can get away with not getting it. And insurance is not that expensive either, but it is a necessity to get for your business as well. Going back, I'm just going through some of the questions here that are popping in the chat. A number of people want to know as well about if they want to sell goods, let's say, for example, toys or clothes, and they want to import the product from abroad and to be able to sell it here. What sort of license would they be looking at getting in any emirate if they wanted to be able to sell those?
Well, I would say it's a general trading license that they need to be looking at. And if they are going to be based in a free zone, then they should either hire a fulfillment service provider to store the product, or they can rent space or a whole warehouse for themselves, depending on the quantity that they want to sell. But they'd need to sell it from the free zone. So they'd need to engage with, say, Airmex, DHL, FedEx, or a similar last mile delivery provider who also acts as a distributor who can pick the goods up from the free zone and then deliver it to their clients on mainland.
Okay. Going back to residency for a second, we've had a number of questions going in about residency. And one person has put down here, according to the recent legislation, if you get a free zone license, for example, e-commerce, you are also eligible for residency. Can you please shed some light on that? Is the residency restricted to the free zone only? It's kind of going
Saleh,
back to
do you want to take it, or I take it?
No, take it.
So maybe you were not, whoever asked the question, you were not there at the beginning of this session, but we clarified that residency or your visa is something that's issued by the Department of Immigration. Saleh had the full formal name of it, but it's issued by the Department of Immigration, whereas your license is issued by one of the 60+ licensing authorities that we have that allows you to perform commercial activities. Now, if a free zone says to you, I'm going to also give you residency, it literally means I'm going to be your sponsor. So the free zone acts as your sponsor in that case and takes your documents, goes to the Department of Immigration and gets you a visa. If that free zone is issuing you a license, they cannot guarantee you residency, or they cannot guarantee you a visa, because it is at the sole discretion of the Department of Immigration. They can act as your sponsor, which is what happens, which is why free zones, each company has a visa quota, if you know, because the whole free zone has a visa quota. So they can only issue as many quotas. So what they do is with free zone companies, they give you visa packages. You can have 1 visa company, 3 visa companies, or maximum 6. Free zone companies never give you more than 6 visas per company. If you ever recall that. I hope that clarifies the question.
Okay. Super. And another area, there's a number of people who have been working digitally, especially over the past 18 months. And it's been asked if they offer their services in international freelance platforms while working in Dubai, is that allowed?
Yes, definitely. There's no restriction on that.
So would they need, I think probably what she's asking is, would she need to have a license for that? Let's say, for example, if she lists herself on Upwork or one of those freelance platforms and is paid internationally, would she need any sort of license for that? Or is she allowed since the work is international?
She would be regulated by the terms of the platform that she's applying on and where that platform is regulated. If they're regulated by US legislation, for example, and they require her to comply with some additional regulations. But as far as I know, the only thing that they may ask is for her to have a license to provide those services, or a certificate or skills or qualifications to provide those particular services online.
Okay. I'm jumping around a little bit. I know you're not accountants, So we're not going to go into detail. We did run a session previously on finance, and we will be doing more, and we will be doing a session on VAT. But there is a number of questions that are popping up about VAT. So I just want to cover that, because I know, especially for people who maybe don't come from countries where VAT is charged, or, you know, VAT is relatively new here within the UAE. Maybe you could just explain the legal requirements really quickly for a business about VAT, because I think there is a bit of confusion that some people have said, oh, I'm offering my services online, I don't have to charge VAT. Or other people have said, oh, I'm delivering a service, I need to add 5% VAT on that, but they haven't actually registered themselves with the Federal Tax Authority. Maybe if you could just explain that in a couple of minutes or less.
Saleh, I'll go first, and then maybe you can add some points to whatever I'm missing. I'll give you a few pointers about VAT, right? With VAT, it's never your business that pays the VAT. You act as a tax collector, and your end clients pay the VAT. You collect it, and then you pay it to the Federal Tax Authority. That's the whole concept of VAT. And if you have paid any VAT, you can reclaim that from the government, subject to the transaction that you're paying, and subject to you not being the end client in a particular transaction. Now, if you reach the threshold of 368,000 dirhams or $100,000, that's when it becomes mandatory for you to go get a tax registration number, or TRN. Remember, registration is a process that is mandatory if you achieve this threshold. If you don't register yourself and you're trying to avoid VAT, which is something that you shouldn't realistically be doing because you're really not paying that money, if the tax authority comes and audits you, you could be penalized. The penalties are quite significant. And remember, whether or not you have a tax registration number, the Federal Tax Authority has the legal right to come and audit your accounts. So it is very important for you not to store your accounts on Excel sheets. It is very important to store your accounts professionally in a professional accounting software. So please remember this, don't try to avoid VAT. It's quite important. And also when you issue tax invoices, if you are registered, remember that the tax invoices have to be in the particular format that is approved by the Federal Tax Authority. Don't create your own creative tax invoice. You could fall into a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
it has to have certain elements in there. The VAT must be clear with every aspect, with every payment that you are asking for on the invoice. There has to be a header that says tax invoice. So there are quite a few elements. Try not to avoid these elements. I think I've covered pretty much most of it. Saleh, anything to add?
I'll just add one point. VAT is federal. So this means it applies all over the UAE, whether mainland in any Emirates or whether free zone in any Emirates, it applies all over the UAE over every single trade license. So this is important that you know VAT it apply all over the country. And
I want to add,
as Biancka says, you are just adding the 5% and you are collecting it from your clients, and then you are obligated to pay it to the tax authority.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. Yeah, Jen, I wanted to add to that individuals on e-trader licenses or freelancer permits, or individuals who are renting out commercial properties as well, have to register for VAT. So it's individuals and companies can register for a tax registration number. And even if you are a foreigner outside the UAE, you can register for a tax registration number. And how you determine whether you register for tax are two things. The first is if you have met that threshold, which is when you go and apply for tax registration number. Or secondly, if the place of supply, and this is the determining factor, the place of supply of your services or products is the UAE. Immediately then you need to apply for your tax registration number, and VAT is applicable.
And that's really important, because I think sometimes people think, oh, you know, I've got a free zone license, so I'm exempt from VAT, or I'm trading online. it doesn't matter. Even if your clients are outside of the UAE, you might not necessarily be charging them VAT, but it will mean that you will reach the threshold and you'll have to charge VAT. And I'm just writing that threshold in the box, which is 375,000 dirhams, or the minimum threshold is 187,500, just so you have that on your records. So what that means is when you reach 187,500 dirhams within 12 months, you can then apply for VAT to the Federal Tax Authority, and you can get a tax registration number. When you reach 375,000, or it looks like you're getting very close to 375,000, you absolutely have to make that registration for VAT. And it is, as Biancka said, you're not paying a tax. So this is something that you are collecting on behalf of the government, and you are paying to the government. And it's a really good thing to show that your business is doing well. If you're making over 375,000 dirhams a year, you should be super proud of yourself. That's amazing that you've reached that. And that means that your business is starting to scale. So it shouldn't be something that you should be afraid of. It's something that you should feel really proud of yourself on that. Now, people are asking things about how they collect the VAT, hold it to pay. That is something where, especially when it comes to VAT, unless you're very savvy with numbers, this might be an area in your business that you probably want to spend, and you want to pay to have the services of an accountant to help you with that, to make sure that your books are in order, and also to help you with submitting the return, because everybody has different times for when their returns are due as well.
Yeah, typically it's quarterly. It's quarterly, but depending on when you register, the dates for your payment of your returns are different. And as Jen mentioned, it is strongly advisable to have an accountant or a financial specialist advise you if you're not savvy with numbers.
Absolutely. And I think there's a couple of things that are really mandatory and kind of legally required as well if you have a business, is that you need to have a business bank account in your company name, not in your personal name. So also as well, if you're about to register for VAT and all of that money has been coming into your personal bank account, that's going to be super messy. So you do want to make sure that you have a business bank account in your company name, and that the money is going into that bank account as well. And to make sure too that you have online accounting software and that you're using it. And the rates vary anywhere from about 50 dirhams a month to about 200 dirhams a month, depending upon what sort of system that you want to use. So Abby says you only register once you make over 187,500. That's right. And that's the minimum. You can wait a little bit more, but you will have to register when you reach 375. Moving on from that, freelancing. Let's jump into that, because there are a lot of questions around freelancing, and we had a number of questions submitted in advance about freelancing. Saleh, when you gave your presentation, you spoke about a number of jurisdictions that are offering freelance permits and that you can register with them to become a freelancer. But then a number of people also said, but there are these other companies around the UAE that are also offering packages for people to be freelancers. What's the difference between somebody going to one of the regulated free zones or government entities that is offering a permit to be able to freelance versus going to a company who provides freelance licenses for people? I'll give that either to Saleh or Biancka, whoever feels.
Yeah, just to clarify it, maybe Biancka can add. I think when we speak about companies, I think we either speak about a corporate service provider who's going to license you actually within one of the authority that provide the free zone license. No companies has the right to issue this trade license. It's only belong to the authority. Or it is a business center, whether it's part of a free zone that is already given this freelance license, or in the mainland, if the mainland give that free zone freelance license. So license always will be issued by the authority. If we have a company in place, it means either they are a corporate service provider or a business center. So where they can provide sometime accounting service, other service where freelance or individual business women are in need.
Yeah, I want to, sorry, Jen.
No, it's fine, go ahead.
I wanted to add to what Saleh is saying, and maybe it's just a clarification point here, that only the authorities have the right to issue licenses to you. We are aware of businesses that promote freelancing options, etc. But what they do is they license you under the activities of one of their companies, and then they issue you visas. So you're really acting as their employee in real legal terms. So you have to be very careful who's licensing you and whether you really have a license or you just have a visa under a company that has the activity. And at the end of the day, where is that invoicing coming from? Is it your client really, or are they somebody else's client? Which means really, if you are getting a visa from them, you're their employee performing activities under their license, and they've got a license from the Abu Dhabi Economic Department, for example, and you're transacting with them from, say, XYZ.com, XYZ at XYZ.com. It's another brand name. That could create a lot of confusion.
And within that as well, if they are doing that, when they invoice, it technically needs to be done by the company who's giving them the visa, right? That's the other thing as well. And I don't know if people understand that, and oftentimes when that happens, that they'll typically take a percentage of that invoice as well, won't they?
It depends on who this particular entity is and what the terms are. But you also, if I were to go and get a visa from them, I'd need to understand that the commercial activity is a license that they have. And my clients are really not my clients at the end of the day, it's their clients. So if I were to then leave and segregate myself away from them, they have the right to contact my clients. They can easily take my clients, send their own newsletters to them, use them for marketing purposes. So that's something that you need to be very careful about as well. Sharing personal data of clients, it's quite tricky.
So I guess that shows that there's a benefit to going straight to the government to get that freelance permit as well. So you're able to do that work directly.
Well, as lawyers, we would always recommend going directly and getting a license for yourself with a licensed authority, an authority that is regulated and meant to give you a license, rather than going to somebody who does not want to give you their true identity, or they want to create this platform where, you know, they're just giving you visas in the name of licensing. So which is why it's quite important to understand the difference between a visa and a license.
Got it. Okay. A few questions have come in about people obtaining visas by buying property and getting those visas, and then also understanding if they can set up a company if they have a visa from being an investor in the country. Would one of you be able to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, for property, yes. The question was asked. Actually, the fact in that question, I think it's correct. For an investor who's buying property, minimum of 1 million dirhams, is eligible to obtain a visa for himself, for the buyer, who will have the who will have the title deed in his name, and his close family, wife and kids. So there's no number of how many visa. It depends on the number of the wife and kids.
Or husband and kids, Saleh.
Yes.
You're talking to women here.
Yes, husband and kids, yes. Or maybe she's asking on behalf of her husband or partner. So.
And with licensing, they're able to go and set up their own business, but there's no deals on getting a trade license. It's the same as what everybody else pays, right? It's the same process.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the reason for the property, sometimes, especially it happens sometimes with wealthy individual who who, in order to have a proper residence visa in maybe multiple countries, he buy properties on those countries. So he's not necessarily having a business activity on those countries. And if he want to do business, this is absolutely separate, and he need to seek the relevant trade license.
Okay. Now, there was one question that was submitted in the advance where she had asked, does it take 1 to 2 years to add a specialized activity to her DED permit? She wanted to have an understanding about how that works.
Well, it's very unclear to me because I don't know, Saleh, whether you're aware of this, but it's unclear to me why it would take 1 to 2 years, and it depends on the activity and on the particular authority. So if a client came to us and asked us this question, we would go down to the relevant authority and ask them this question. And if it was going to take 1 or 2 years, then we'd obviously lobby on behalf of the client.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Yeah, I was wondering about that as well. And I think, you know, the thing that as well is there are so many jurisdictions within the UAE, and all of them have different rules. And we're having a few people mention in the chat as well, can you tell us about the process? What are the documents that I need? What about for this free zone, this mainland jurisdiction? And the thing is there's general documents that are needed by all jurisdictions, but then every other jurisdiction has different requirements, and there's over 60 different jurisdictions. So it's quite hard to have that list and have it up to date because it's changing all the time. Would you be able to tell everybody maybe what are some of the main ones that are across all of the jurisdictions that are simple requirements that you need to keep in mind when setting up a business? Because I think sometimes the process of setting up a business can sometimes be slowed down for people, and I hear about their frustration, and it's often because they don't have the correct documents. They haven't maybe gotten documents that would be required to be attested and notarized in their home countries, and depending upon where they come from, that can add another 2 or 3 months onto the process. So maybe if you could, it can't be specific for everything, but just general things that people should keep in mind. And then you would have to go and speak to that specific jurisdiction to find out exactly what you would need in detail.
Yeah, well, your identification documents are always required, of course. You need, if you have an office space or a retail space that you require, the authority will first ask you for a copy of that lease contract or purchase contract of the space where you're going to be operating from. Typically, also for general managers, authorities ask you for CVs, identification documents, and certificates. Now, if you're going to be performing additional activities, like, for example, if you're going to want to be a lawyer, or you want to be a financial auditor, there are special exams you may need to take or additional licenses that you will need to get to provide those specialized services. For example, education is one area that you need special licenses. Education, auditing, legal, these are places where you need additional licenses. And also if you are having, say, restaurants, you want to open a restaurant or a salon, then you need to get additional approval from the municipality, from the civil defense, and not just overall authority. There are various departments within those authorities, like the health and safety department, the planning department, where they approve everything in that particular premises. So before renting a premises out for places like salons or restaurants, you need to be very clear with the broker, if you're, or the developer, wherever you're leasing it from or buying it from, that that is actually meant for a restaurant or a salon, and it will meet the specifications when the civil defense department comes to inspect it, because you don't want to take out the lease and then find out that the municipality or the civil defense won't approve it. Saleh, do you want to add to that?
No, fantastic. Actually, I just want to add, go back to 2 points. I mean, regarding the 2 years, just also for my understanding, because we set up a lot of licenses. There's no such 2 years, actually. The lengthy one could be the financial related license, setting up a fund in, for example, DIFC. Yes, it could take a year and plus. But setting up a medical center, the license you will get the license. It will not take much long time. Of course, they will need to inspect the premises where the medical center will take place. So many criteria, but to operate later on, all the doctors will need to be certified by the health authority. So this what takes time, but there's no such 2 years. Also, just I don't know if regarding the visas for the investor who buy property, I don't know if I say the parents as well, because the parents also included. So not to forget the parents.
Never forget mom and dad. Thanks, Saleh. And it is that is where you need to do your research on that, especially if you are having something like premises that it helps to really, I know you're excited, you're like, oh, this place looks perfect, and you go and sign the rental contract and then find out, and I even had it happen to me one time as well, that I got this beautiful space, and then I found out that for the requirement for my trade license, I also needed to have a 24/7 civil defense call box installed within the office. But then the number of permits and processes that had to happen with that actually took about 6 weeks to get it all done. And I had found out that also the previous tenant had unwired the fire system within the offices. And so I had to pay to get all of that rewired and put back into the office again. And that was about, just the civil defense system cost about an extra 50,000 dirhams to get done. So it can end up costing you a lot of money. And we are going to do another session on finding property and asking those questions and knowing how to be prepared for taking on space. So we will be bringing in some experts to talk to you about that, to kind of get rid of some of the confusion in that area. Now we're getting close to time, and I just want to check if there's any other questions. One person has just asked, can food trading be added to a general trading license?
It really depends on the authority and what their regulations are on that particular day that you go to apply for that activity. And as I mentioned, they have traditionally known to go back and forth. And there is nothing in the law that says food trading activity can be applied together with general trading on the same license. So it would really be a case of discussing with the authority on that particular day, because they have the right to change the activities and how they classify the activities together.
Okay, excellent. Now I've just shared everybody's social media handles again, because we have been asked, and it would be great as well if you would be able to include information about the session and talk about it on social media. Please remember to tag NAMA Women and UN Women. And if you'd like to tag Saleh or Biancka or myself, that would be great as well. Import, export, what are the restrictions to import baby food into the UAE? What about when it's meatless?
Well, I don't have the information at hand, regrettably, because it depends on the import-export regulations, and we'd have to look at the Dubai Customs Authority's regulations as well. So regretfully, that's one question that I cannot answer right now. Saleh, I don't know if you can.
No, I only buy them directly from the market.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that, whether it's like Dubai or Sharjah or Abu Dhabi or wherever your trade license is, every authority has different rules. And so with things like that, it's really important that if you want to do that as part of your license, that do that research before you go out and buy the trade license. So you could be sitting on a trade license for 3 to 6 months that you couldn't use, that you've been wasting that money. And that's another thing that I want to emphasize. And Saleh and I spoke about it before, but I think it's so important, because I hear from women constantly, where is the cheapest trade license? I want to do this. Where is the absolute cheapest? I want to pay the lowest price. But the thing to remember with that is that oftentimes you won't be able to set up a bank account, or if you do, it could take you 3 to 6 months to do that. Could you imagine not being able, you pay for this trade license, you set everything up, maybe you have this beautiful website, but you can't have a payment gateway set up to that, so you're not able to trade. So you need to look at kind of the offsets, that maybe you save yourself 5,000 or 10,000 dirhams, but would you be making more than that every single month? And if so, it's better to spend and go and find a trade license that's going to be right for you. And also, oftentimes closing your business, and actually this is an area maybe that we should touch on as well, Biancka and Saleh, is when you close your business, you don't just sign a piece of paper and say that you're closing your business. It can be a lengthy process and it can cost money. Maybe one of you could talk just a little bit about what people would expect if they do have to close a business.
One very important point where a lot of also international investors struggle when they close a free zone business, while there was some labor dues. So the authority immediately have the access to put a travel ban on him till this dues all settled. So even if it's a small amount, if it's 500 or 1,000 dirham left, not settled yet for any labor dues, he will be stopped in the airport. So closing a business, it's a procedure itself. It could be costly, it depends on the authority, but in all cases, you absolutely need to close it properly.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. There are several ways of doing it. However, you cannot leave the license once it's expired, because if you just leave it and say, I'm not going to renew it because I don't have the money, you will continue to incur penalties. And this could also mean incurring a travel ban if at all the free zone or the regulator decides to say, okay, this person has not paid their dues or whatever. So it's very important to close the license. And remember, closing is a very detailed process. And it can be costly, and it takes about 3 months in the minimum. And if you have any cases like court cases, and Saleh, you can correct me, but if there are court cases outstanding, for example, or labor disputes, you really cannot close your license. You have to close all those disputes first, and only then you will be able to close your license. And don't forget, there is also a requirement to put notices in 2 local newspapers for 45 days. So it's not
and in
short.
Arabic as well.
Yes.
A couple of other things going back that were asked. One about invoicing and issuing of receipts. A few people asked, do they need to issue invoices legally in English and Arabic, or can it be done just in English or just in Arabic?
I think I'll have to go back to the law to refer to that. I'm not 100% sure.
No,
but that being said, we issue our invoices in English, and only in English, and we don't issue it in 2 languages.
Yeah. No, the invoice can be issued in either language.
Okay, excellent. And I don't know, you're not accountants, so you might not know this, but somebody has also asked, is it legally required that they also need to issue a client with a receipt once they've received a payment, or do they just receive the payment and reconcile it in their books?
I'm not sure about this, but we as a law firm, we issue receipts.
Okay, great. So that's
nowadays.
Sorry, Saleh?
Yeah, nowadays most of the payments goes through like transfer, bank transfer, or payment gateway, where the payer always have a receipt in his hand, or a document to prove he has transferred or paid this amount of money.
And this is something as well that can be very easily automated through your accounting system, which is another reason why you should have a very good accounting system. So it will automate this and you won't have to take care of that as well. Abby has asked, how can you add more activities to your license? Do you have any?
Yeah, key to remember would be that they would all need to be similar activities that can be classified under the same category. For example, if you're talking about contracting and building, then you can possibly add architecture, fit out, carpentry, but you won't be able to add dentistry, for example, because it's a dissimilar activities. So traditionally, most regulators allow for addition of activities, but bear in mind that free zones have a limitation on the number of activities, even though they may fall within the same category. So that's something that you may want to think about.
Excellent. We've also been asked, I'm happy to hear that people are thinking accounting systems, to recommend accounting systems. Now, we have done finance sessions, and we are going to be doing a lot more, because I know this is a really big area that people would like support in. What's important when you get an accounting system is to make sure that it is compliant with the Federal Tax Authority. And there are a number of systems that are compliant with the Federal Tax Authority. You can Google. I would say, though, that the ones that are the most popular, and it depends upon price, how many currencies you're using, what sort of reports you need, it really depends. But popular ones are things like Zoho, Xero, and QuickBooks. I would say that those are probably the three most popular ones for small businesses. But again, I'm not endorsing any of those. I think it's best that you look, and a lot of them have free trials, so you can find the ones that would work best for you. I'm just looking at the last questions to see if there's anything else that's come up. I don't necessarily understand this question. Can we get a special website where we can buy company shop or commerce? The person who wrote that, can you just clarify what you mean by that? I'm not entirely clear on that one. Someone wants to know if there's a regulation relating to announcements concerning companies to buy. They want to, so for example, she said that she's looking at buying a company, and she's been looking online, and not all of them have been verified. So how does she know if the company that she's buying is legitimate or not? Actually, that's a good one, because you help a lot of people in buying companies as well. Maybe you could explain a bit about the due diligence. And I think that's something where, if you're buying a company, you do need to hire a lawyer for something like that.
Yeah, it's quite critical, Jen, to hire legal counsel, especially when you're buying a company or any asset for that matter. But if you want to know if there is a centralized platform where to buy a company, we can't advise on that, because there's no centralized platform offered by the government as yet, or in any regulation. But in terms of the due diligence, it is quite a lengthy process. It's quite critical and important, especially to alleviate any future risks. But the process of due diligence is something that we would identify or set out depending on what the nature of the company is that you want to buy, how big it is, because the bigger it is, and depending on its activity, the due diligence could be quite complex.
Yeah. And it is important not just to go and buy a company and exchange money, that you do need to do that due diligence, that it's worth paying the money for legal fees to have that support to do it properly. And the person commented and said in the country where she's from, that they do have a legal portal where companies can be recognized. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist in the UAE, but we also have to remember that the country is only 50 years old. And so, not everything is changing at such a quick pace that maybe within a couple of years, something like that would exist.
I'm happy to give one tip though, Jen, for whoever's
Yes.
wanting to buy a company. If the company is small and you don't think, or you don't have the funds to go ahead with due diligence through a lawyer or a law firm, the least you can do is ask the seller for a certificate from the Etihad Credit Bureau. So the Etihad Credit Bureau is a centralized private agency that provides credit ratings for individuals and companies. So when you get a report, you can apply online to the Etihad Credit Bureau for a report. If you are the buyer, you will not be able to apply for it. You need to be the owner of the particular entity. It costs about 200 dirhams, but don't quote me on that. It's a minuscule fee that you pay, and you'll get a report setting out any debts, liabilities, check bounces, any additional information that could be quite pertinent to knowing more about that particular individual or entity, along with the credit score or credit rating that they've developed through their artificial intelligence algorithms. One thing you should remember, however, with these reports is if the company is less than 2 years old, they may not have enough data to generate in that report. It's worth a try though.
That's a really good tip as well. And I think a few people have asked for the website. You can just go and Google Etihad Credit Bureau and you should be able to find that information as well. Does anybody have any other burning questions while we have Saleh and Biancka here that you would like to ask? I think we've covered a lot. And so one thing before we end, and this is also an area I think that small businesses sometimes forget, is the issue of when you set up your business, what legal documents should you have in place for running your business?
Saleh, you take that.
What legal documents?
Yeah. So for example, Saleh, I'm talking about things like if you have a website, you need to have terms and conditions and privacy policy on your website, contracts, different things like that. Maybe if we can just clarify that.
Yes, any company has external parties and internal parties. So you always start with the internal. So you should have a properly drafted shareholders agreement. This is number one, and it's crucial. Then you should have a properly drafted employment agreement, which could cover, again, I made this point last time, the standard labor contract by the Ministry of Labor. This is just a formal contract for the sake of registration, this relationship. However, it's absolutely not enough to regulate the relationship between the employee and the employer. And in some sophisticated activities, you really need a detailed, tailored employment contract, which could cover also IP-related issues. Then if you have a platform or an activity, you run it through your website, you need a privacy policy, terms and condition. Then you have all your contracts with your external parties, whether a supplier to your company or whether a customer for the company. So don't ever leave any relationship without a contract.
Good advice. And, you know, I know it's tempting for people to do it because you think, oh, it's going to cost money and, you know, I can't afford to do it. But if something goes wrong, or if you have a client that doesn't pay you or a customer that doesn't pay you, it can be really painful. It can cost you a lot of money. And chances are that if you don't have that legal framework in place, that you won't be able to get your money, or it will be, you'll end up paying 2, 3, 4 times the amount that it would have cost you to get those contracts in place to try and resolve that as well. Now, a number of people have been asking me about the recording and how they can get access to that. We, just to let you know, this is recorded, and when everything is set up and ready, you will be sent a link so you can access this recording and the other recordings for the other sessions as well. One last question I'm going to ask, because she has asked this a few times, and I'm sorry, Patricia, for not going and picking this up, and then we'll end it, is about pet treats and homemade pet treats. Is it possible to make pet treats at home and to be able to sell them, or did the same rules around food apply to that?
The same rules around food apply to it. Manufacturing is something, especially with food, that we need to be very careful about. And I would encourage, Patricia, I would encourage you to use a cloud kitchen if possible.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Well, I know everybody's probably keen to get off. Thank you so much, Saleh and Biancka, for your time. I really appreciate you coming in again and asking everyone's questions. And I hope that everyone here feels that you got some more information and it's helping you make the decision that you need to be able to set up your business and get the right trade license. UN Women and NAMA will be running several more sessions. We'll be running at least 2 every month. The next one is on the 28th of July. and there will be an email that will be coming out soon. Now, this session might not be relevant for some of you because it is focused more for women who have had a more established business, and we'll be helping them on growing their business. But in early August, just to let you know, we are going to be running a session on business planning. So I think that that will probably be something that will really help you in growing your business and getting all of the right structures in place, because it is important to be working from some sort of business plan, and that gives you the foundation to be able to run your business. So I would like to, first of all, thank UN Women and NAMA for supporting this and supporting women entrepreneurs. And to Saleh and Biancka from ICLO, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for giving back to the community. We really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for taking part. So I wish everybody an amazing Eid, a blessed Eid with all of your family. And we will see you back at the end of July or in early August for the next session. Till then, we're stronger together, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.